When I was a kid, I had a book of riddles and logic puzzles. You know the ones. They describe some kind of situation. You have to turn to the back of the book to figure out the answers. I had a favorite riddle that was in that book. And maybe some of you know it. It goes a little bit like this. A father and his son are driving down a long country road. They have the music cranked way up, and they don't notice that they're approaching some train tracks. The gate malfunctions, it doesn't close, and their car gets blindsided by an oncoming train. The father dies in the crash. The son is rushed to the emergency room. The doctor runs into the emergency room, sees the kid, and says, "I can't operate on this boy. He's my son." I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. Now, the father died in the crash. The boy's getting operated on. So who's the doctor? Now, I am embarrassed to say that as a kid, for the life of me, I could not figure this one out. But there's actually two very simple answers to this riddle. One, the boy has two fathers. Two, and this was the actual answer in the back of the book, the doctor is the mother. It seems obvious when you hear it. How many of you figured it out right away, one of the two answers? And is there anyone who's brave enough to admit that they also didn't get it at first? This is the power of unconscious bias. We're raised to form a specific image in our minds of what the default family looks like, of what the default person in a position of power looks like. Now, this whole riddle plays to the fact that many of us would picture the doctor to be a straight, probably white man. And we usually don't realize this is happening. We just absorb it, a lot of it from the media and advertising that we're exposed to from a very young age. Challenging this unconscious bias is hard work. And it takes bravery to admit when you were wrong. So props to everybody who raised their hand for the second question I asked. Ali Hanan, our next speaker, is doing the hard work to break down unconscious bias in the advertising world and beyond through her role as founder and CEO of Creative Equals. This incredible organization has not just created the advertising industry standard for best practices in diversity and inclusion, getting ad giants like Havas London and Ogilvy on board. They've also trained over 1,200 creative minds through their Be Awesome Night School and created so many more opportunities that are changing the industry and people's lives. Ali is going to talk to us about why inclusion isn't just the right thing to do. You need it to keep your business competitive. I am so happy to have her as our opening keynote today. Ali, welcome to Scale.
So good morning, Scale. So before I talk about, thank you so much for such an awesome introduction, Liz. Obviously, I've got huge performance anxiety now. But before I start, I wanted to talk about the work that we do. I just wanted to kind of get a feeling today of just, oh my goodness, this is completely the wrong slide. Can we go back to the start of the deck, please? Right to the beginning, this is the end of the deck, sorry. But while we're getting to the beginning of the deck, let's start with thinking about who's in the room today, and let's start thinking about diversity and inclusion. So firstly, put your hand up if you're over 30. Okay, keep your hand up if you're over 40. Keep your hand up if you're over 50. Anyone here over 50? Brilliant. Okay, so here's the thing. In the UK, 70% of the country's wealth is held by people over 50. So if you're not considering older people in your business, if you're not considering the older audience, just maybe you're missing out on quite a lot of revenue. And also just to note that people over 50 are twice as likely to have a successful startup as people over the age of 25 to 30. Okay, put your hand up if you're Black, Asian, minority, ethnic in the room today. Okay, a few hands there. So in the UK, again, 95% of the journalism community is white. 45% of that community go to private school. So just maybe in the media, we're missing out on important and valuable stories from all sorts of different communities. So really changing the dynamic and those teams that are shaping that media is just so important. And only 5% of creative directors come from Black, Asian, minority, ethnic backgrounds. And of course, we know from McKinsey studies that when you have women on boards, when you also, profits go up by 16%. When you have women on boards and you have ethnic minorities, profits can go up by 35%. So again, thinking about the makeup of your business, thinking about the makeup of those boards is just so important. Okay, so put your hands up if you are registered disabled in some way. Anybody here? Nobody? Okay, so that's interesting. Again, only 7% of people are born with a disability. In our adult life, in the adult population, actually 18% of people have a disability. In our older life, 44% of people will become disabled. So again, if you're not thinking about disability within your teams, if you're not thinking about those audiences, if your products and your services aren't accessible, then again, just maybe you're missing out on a lot of revenue there. Anybody here actually dyslexic? Anyone here dyslexic? I'm dyslexic, actually. But what's interesting about dyslexia is once upon a time, dyslexia was considered to be such a disability that dyslexic men were not allowed to give sperm, right? So Sir Richard Branson, who's one of the world's most famous dyslexics, actually set up the world's first dyslexic sperm bank because it turns out that 35% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic, and 40% of the world's self-made billionaires. So dyslexia comes from the neurodiversity tribe and ways of thinking, and again, not having different kinds of thinkers in your business, just again, maybe means that you're not bringing different kind of ideas and perspectives and thoughts to the table. Okay, quick question. Anyone here autistic or have autism in their families? Anybody? Thank you for raising your hand. It's a super important autism, actually. And we're going to kind of have a good look at this in just a moment. Because autistic thinkers are genius and they're brilliant. Some of the world's best hackers have been autistic. And in fact, a guy called Laurie Love missed out being deported from the UK to the US this year because he actually managed to hack the FBI's system. So again, just thinking about autistic thinkers, Microsoft is actually really proactively hiring for them at the moment to run all their data teams and all their security teams because they are just so brilliant at thinking about systems and thinking about how they can really work around them. So a quick question, anyone suffered from burnout or mental health issues? I should see some hands here. This is a startup community, right? And I think, thank you for raising your hand. I think what's really interesting about the startup community is often we work super hard, super long hours all the time, and that can have a huge impact on our mental health and also the mental health sometimes of some of our workers. And 1 in 4 of us will have some kind of mental health challenge throughout our lives. So again, taking away the stigma, really beginning to talk about these things and really embracing mental health within the companies that we are growing and scaling is really super important. And lastly, just thinking about 2 other different groups. Anyone LGBTQI? Yay, brilliant, welcome. So I think, again, just thinking about LGBTQI, often we think that the work, has been done in this space, but actually in the UK, 2 out of 5 trans people have experienced some kind of hate over the last year. And again, actually, when you think about our workplaces, 71% of LGBTQI people often go back into the closet when they come into the workplaces. So encouraging everybody to be able to show up as they are, as who they are, means that they can bring their whole selves to work and really do their best for you in their roles. I think lastly, any female founders here? Put your hand up. Yay, brilliant. Keep your hand up if you're a female founder who has got venture capital. Okay, I want you all just to look around the room right now at the fact that there are no hands, because only 2% of female founders actually get funded. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that right there. So all these things, and thinking about diversity, thinking about even this room as a data point is just so very important. And my own story actually starts a couple of years ago. I'm a digital creative director. I've worked in the advertising industry since 1999. And actually what happened was a young female team came to see me, and they sat down and they were like, "Oh, Ali, we thought you were going to be Alistair." And I said, "Well, why would you think I would be a guy?" And they said, "Well, actually, we've been around to 15 different companies, and you're the first female creative director that we've met." 15, right? So after they left, I went to Google, because we know Google is our friend, and I put the words creative director into Google, and this is what came up. So that is the world of creative direction. In 2008, just 3% of the world's creative directors were women. Now it's gone up to about 10%. But of course, again, when we start thinking of that in context of the audiences that we're reaching out to, just 12% of creative directors are women, but of course our consumer audiences, well, women make 85% of all household decisions, and yet 91% of them feel that advertisers just don't understand them, because just maybe the bias from the people who are making the work isn't resonating, isn't feeling relevant, and isn't really hitting home with our powerful consumer female audiences. And I know that this is the same in Germany. Just 10% of creative directors in Germany are women, and this is actually the face of the Art Directors Club of Europe, and you can see it's, again, like how we show up is how people perceive industry. So our ethos is really simple, and I would like you to all write this down and think about this for yourselves. Diverse teams create diverse work for diverse audiences. And, how we think about teams and how you should think about your way that you approach this as well is everything starts on your shop floor. So the way that you bring people in and who you actually move through up into those critical leadership roles is where you need to look. In and around that, there's the C-suite and all your HR policies and practices that you have. And in and around that is the recruitment sector, and we're going to talk about this in just a moment. And of course, there's the industry and how you show up. Congratulations to the SCALE team for having a really diverse lineup here today. And of course, then there's society and all the audiences that we serve. But the fact is, bias comes along every part of that circle. But what we've actually started to see from our data model is actually when people feel I'm included at work and diversity is a priority for our company, well, happiness levels go up. And when people are happier, they're going to be more productive. Also, they're more likely to stay in your business by up to 48%, and they're more likely to promote your business. So that is a beautiful slide. That is all the good reasons to really think about putting that front and foremost within your company. So just talking for a moment about unconscious bias, because we all have it, and we're all the sum total of all the experiences of what we've seen and the media that we've been told, etc. And our brains, they take in something like 4 million pieces of information in any one given moment. And of course, we can only process 40. So a lot of the ways that we interact with the world are unconscious. And we have 2 different types of thinking. We have fast thinking, which obviously used to save us from those saber-toothed tigers when we were, back in the cave days. And then we've got our slow thinking processes. So when we meet someone for the first time, often we're engaging those fast thinking processes, and often they that thinking doesn't really help us make the best decisions. Now, there are something like 150 different types of bias, and this one is beauty bias. So we prefer people who are good looking. When you look at presidents of the United States, it turns out that we also prefer people who are tall. So 70% of them have been over 6'2". And look at Trump, he's a tall guy, right? And so, it's just recognizing that we are biased and, look, he's just got to give you a wink. And of course, one of the strongest types of bias is affinity bias. So we often will select and choose people who look and sound like us. It's a tribal thing, it's hardwired, but we're programmed to really choose people from our own tribe. Oh, I'm just going to go back, actually. And this is an actual org chart. And one thing I'd also love you to go back and do today is color block out your org charts in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, LGBTQI, age, etc. This is a cut in terms of gender. And you can see that these leaders up here, these founders, have employed a whole group of people that look and sound like themselves. And of course, the thing is the orange block's a young woman coming into the business. And suddenly you can see the challenges for them. They see no role models. There are no people like them to follow. There are no actual mothers within this business either. And so actually, I just saw a piece of research this week that says that if you're a token, if you're a minority in a company, you're 50% more likely to leave that company over the next 6 months. So again, just thinking about how you can really, if you're all scaling up, if you're all at that beginning of your growth stage, just thinking about how you can hire different from the start will set you, well for the future. Because actually, once you've got a culture and it's quite entrenched, it's a lot harder to change it. So just thinking about recruitment and just thinking about who you're bringing into your business, it's also just really understanding how biases come into play here. So here we have 2 identical CVs. All that's changed out in the CV is the name, right? So we have Adam and we have Muhammad. Guess who gets seen for 4 times as many job interviews? So clearly that's Adam. It's because people will look at a name on a CV even and make a snap judgment. They'll look at where they've got educated and make a snap judgment. They might even look at where they live and make a snap judgment. So again, biases can come into play even in the way that you're reviewing CVs for your role. Now, I'm just also going to show you this video in just a moment because speaking of autism, thinking about having these incredible brains within our businesses, they find things like interviews really super challenging. So let's just watch this.
Is it Stephen? Please, follow me.
Congrats on all the awards. So, tell me about yourself.
So, what would you say your strengths and weaknesses are?
Really? You don't look it.
Just so you know, the role has changed ever so slightly, but it's nothing major.
Let's find out a bit about you. So what experience do you have? What skills, what abilities? Anything?
It doesn't seem like you've had a job for a few months.
6 months?
A year. Why is that?
Okay. It's nice to meet you.
Thanks for coming in. We'll be in touch.
Are you okay?
I'm not unemployable. I'm autistic. And sometimes I get too much information.
So again, just thinking about, in the UK, something like 75% of young autistic men are unemployed. And again, just thinking about those brilliant minds that we could be bringing in, thinking about how we can help them prepare to come and to be interviewed and to bring them into our businesses, can, again, stop those amazing minds going to waste. And the other area that we're really passionate about is bringing women back to work who've been off on an extended career break. I know actually it's a lot better in Germany, for example, than in the UK, but this is a post that actually happened just on the 28th of August, so just a couple of months ago. A woman coming back into the advertising world, and she was told by this recruiter that no one would be interested in her and none of her clients would touch her. This recruiter wouldn't negotiate flexible working for this woman, and she was told that no one is interested in a returning mother. So this huge forgotten workforce of women who'd like to come back, often their CVs might date, their books might date, and they might find it very difficult to come back into the workplace, but they can often be your most efficient and excellent workers. So again, just thinking about bias when you're hiring, thinking about the way that you outreach, who you're outreaching to, and thinking about all those different kinds of communities that you can be bringing in and how bias might be getting in the way. So when it comes to culture, 4 things to think about in culture. Am I safe? Am I connected? Do I have a future here? And am I aligned to the purpose of this company? So write those down. Am I safe? Am I connected? Do I have a future here? And am I aligned to the purpose of this company? So when we talk about top culture, one of the most important things that you can have, these are the 4 key drivers of culture. And to really understand culture within businesses, we've set up an equality standard. I'm going to talk you through just quickly some of the bits of data that we've found that equally show how bias can come into play within culture. So one of the 12 of the things that we look at are inclusive workplaces. We look at purpose and values. We look at flexible working, your leaders and managers and how they're role modeling because they're one of the key drivers of culture in a business. Career progression, so who's moving up the ladder and why. Recruitment and retention, front door, back door, because you can bring diverse teams in, but unless you're inclusive, they will leave your business. Looking at well-being, looking at composition of a workforce, and looking at equal opportunity. And then, interestingly, if you, might bring in someone who does have autism, well, they might find those open plan offices really challenging. And here's a bit of verbatim. I hate this noisy open plan office. The lights give me a headache. Often it's, can feel very intense for them. And, this guy would like to work from home, but his boss thinks, they don't do flexible working. When we look at Net Promoter Score for a company, for example, we can also divide it out by different demographics. We can see, for example, -10 is a good score, by the way, in case you're going, wow, that's really low. -10 is good. So juniors are coming in. They're really positive about the business. You can see the squeezed middle here, often trying to please from below and please above. Equally, we can see parents versus non-parents. We can see if I'm white versus whether I'm Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. And then we can start unpacking that low figure for that group. And we can see, for example, if I'm Black, Asian, minority, ethnic in this particular company, there's a lot of degrading language, sexist remarks, racist remarks. When challenged, I'm told to lighten up. So when we think about safety within that culture, when we think about connection within that culture, that group is not feeling like they're part of that dynamic. And then we can look at things like these sort of simple statements. I feel valued in my role. My CV is gaining work I'm proud of. My pay level is fair, et cetera, et cetera. And we can see that women score slightly less all along those statements. And over time, over months, over years, that will mean that they are less likely to gain those critical leadership roles within business. Again, just looking at promotion rates, this is actually across the UK's creative industry. If I'm Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, I'm half as likely to get promoted as my white colleagues, which is shocking, right? It's absolutely shocking. But that just goes to show how much bias comes into play. We often feed back to people who look like us. We often promote people who look like us. So again, it's really challenging ourselves to understand these biases and then do different. And again, just when it comes to training and development, actually, different groups have different needs. And just thinking about productivity, I'd love to. We'll just have a poll in the room. Who gets their best ideas in the office? Yay! Okay. Who gets their best ideas in the shower? Yeah, who gets their best ideas on their commute? Like biking around, right? Walking the dog? Okay, so that just goes to show if you ever need a business case for flexible working, you want to be an innovative, creative, profitable company, actually that whole culture of presenteeism and making people come into work to do their job, just maybe you're not going to do that in the best possible way. And these are the top 5 reasons that people will leave your business. And again, thinking about safety, connection, purpose, and future, well, lack of advancement, lack of work-life balance, poor relationship with manager, again, that's connection, conflict with colleagues, that's connection, and lack of organization, vision, or purpose. So understanding why people are leaving your business will also help inform what you can do to really drive that inclusive culture. And I think just stopping now and looking at some work, this is kind of the fun part, right? And not having people present in your teams also means that just maybe you're developing your products and services and forgetting different groups, like the Apple Health Tracker, absolutely classic. They had no woman in their team. When they first launched the health tracker, they had no period tracker. They forgot that 50% of the world's population menstruate. And so what an embarrassment, but they had no woman in their team to sort of pull the lever and say, hey, where's the period tracker? And of course, to launch without it, huge embarrassment. A couple of clangers from International Women's Day, so if you're going to kind of go out and spread the diversity message, you have to think about how your brand is doing it in an authentic way. Like McDonald's, who did the classic, let's turn our M into a W for International Women's Day. Like, what did McDonald's ever do for women? And this one here, an advert that got pulled in the end, a charming period property with a modern side extension. That was for a real estate agent. And of course, stop faking it, try a new position for a recruitment company. I don't know when women's orgasms were ever collated with how they're considering their next career move, but hey. And then just thinking about race, actually just acknowledging in the room that the default setting of the world is white. Look at the dove thing here. We have normal to dark skin, because normal is what? White skin. And actually, they often with beauty products, they've also come under a lot of fire for having things like natural skin, fair, normal skin, etc. Here is also a soap dispenser which wasn't tested on dark skin, so it was only activated by white skin. Again, probably because there was no one from an ethnic minority in the team who could actually say, that's a racist soap dispenser. Anyway, moving along, and I think just looking at some amazing case studies. I've just got 2 more case studies to show here. Anyone know who this is? Okay, this is Edward Infull. He's the first black male director of Vogue magazine. And he has been absolutely instrumental in and actually changing the whole cultural zeitgeist in the UK. So he came in to take over the editorship of Vogue in September last year, and the first thing he did was he fired the team, the whole team that were there. It was formerly staffed by a woman called Alexandra Shulman, who'd basically hired in her own image. It was very white, posh, female, upper class, and he basically walked in and he got rid of everybody. I don't recommend that you do that if you're thinking about embracing diversity, but he built his team from the ground up. And we saw for the first time Oprah Winfrey, a black woman on the cover of Vogue magazine. Then, of course, there was a Muslim woman, there was woman over 50, and his message was all about putting diversity at the heart of all the content and all the editorial. And the whole publishing industry sort of sat waiting to see what would happen. But you know what? What's happened is this. The Vogue circulation has gone up by 50%. In an age where publishing is supposed to be dead, he has actually doubled the circulation. Their profits have gone up by 7.5%, and their revenue on special projects has gone up by 48%. So actually, he's completely transformed the fortunes of Vogue by embracing a diverse audience. And equally, for the first time, he's actually shifted, as the whole zeitgeist has been shifting, the covers of all the other glossy magazines. And for the first time ever in September, 50% of them actually featured a woman of color on the front cover. Now, that shouldn't be exceptional, but it in September 2018, it is, and at long last, we're seeing diversity in the media and the magazines on our stands. And this is the last case study that I'm going to leave you with. I'm sure you all know it. It's the work from Nike. And of course, in the States, we've got Trump. We've got this very kind of like, God, just looking at the news today, it's like every day, it's like, oh, what next? But of course, this is Colin Kaepernick. He's a quarterback from the San Francisco 49ers, who was well known for kneeling in protest during the national anthem. And he was, protesting against social injustice in the States. And of course, this is the backdrop to the protest and what Trump had to say about it.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Right. So with that in mind, Nike made a completely calculated move to put Colin Kaepernick as the face of their latest campaign. And then thinking about diversity, thinking about inclusion, thinking about all the audiences they want to appeal to, they put out this ad.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Because calling a dream crazy is not an insult, it's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest in your school. Be the fastest ever. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it. And if you're a girl from Compton, become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
Pretty powerful stuff, but just look at the diversity in their advert. Just look at who they're appealing to. The outliers, the mavericks, they're embracing truly within that the power of difference. And we know what happened the next day. Their share prices actually fell by 3%. And of course, the whole internet went on flames, literally. The hashtag Burn Nike started to trend. And in fact, I love the story of one guy who was busy burning his Nikes and managed to actually burn his whole house down. Genius. And then, of course, over the subsequent weeks, their profits completely picked up. Over the following weekend, their sales actually went up by 33%. And off that one advert, they've earned $43 million worth of earned media. So an incredible story, just all about embracing the power of difference. And I think with a brand, it's also really knowing your purpose, knowing your values, knowing who you're talking to, who your core audience is, and telling those real and authentic stories. So, oh yeah, this is brilliant. Actually, off the back of the guy setting his whole house alight, they came up with how to burn your product safely. Yeah, love that. So, summing it all up now. First of all of you understand that you're biased, and your bias is really strong. You're going to want to choose people who look and sound like you. So think different. Think of how you can hire different. And then the next thing is think about how you can rewire your hiring. And don't just hire the best person for the job, because if they all look and sound one particular way, they are not going to be the best people for your company. Hire the best person for the team. And then thirdly, start with inclusion. Start with thinking about safety within the company, career progression, who's getting those opportunities. Are you really creating a level and equal playing field for everybody? And then as a company, as a brand, show up as you want to be seen, right? So just think about the images that you're putting as an employer brand out on social network, on social, also on your own website. Show up as you want to be seen and make sure that you're attracting and living diversity and inclusion. And I think, also think about your practices and processes, how you brief, how you create work, what kind of lens is on that work, and how and who it is being seen by. So embed diversity and inclusion into everything. And lastly, this is my call to you, is to think about this question. And I would like you to tweet me throughout the day at Creative Equals about how you are going to put diversity, equality, and inclusion right at the heart of your business, right? Because when you do, you're going to be more profitable, more innovative, more creative, and we see that your staff are also going to be happier. Okay, thank you so much.